All right, if you're building anything serious in the cloud, you know this decision is coming. Amazon Route 53 or Microsoft's Azure DNS. I mean, these are basically the front doors to your applications. So today, we're going to figure out which one you should be handing the keys to.
You know, it's kind of wild when you think about it. Every single click, every tap, every command you issue online, it all kicks off with one simple lookup. Before your phone can pull up that video or your laptop can load a website, it has to ask this one basic question. Hey, where am I supposed to go? It's this invisible, lightning-fast process that, honestly, the entire digital world is built on.
And that, my friends, is DNS, or the Domain Name System. It's the classic analogy for a reason. It really is the phone book of the internet. We give it a friendly name we can actually remember, like www.example.com, and poof, it hands back the number, the IP address that computers need to talk to each other. Super simple idea, right? But it's unbelievably powerful. Okay, but here's where it gets interesting. When you're operating in the cloud, you're not just using the phone book anymore. Nope, you're actually picking who manages that phone book for you. And trust me, that is a high-stakes choice. It's going to have huge ripple effects on your performance, your reliability, and even the fundamental design of your apps.
So, what's the game plan? Simple. First, we'll meet the contenders. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of their core differences. After that, we're throwing them into the deep end with a hybrid cloud challenge. We'll even see what real users are saying. And finally, we'll help you choose your champion.
All right, let's get to it. Time to meet the contenders, the DNS giants from AWS and Azure.
And boom, right off the bat, we see a huge difference in philosophy. Amazon's Route 53 is basically a one-stop shop. It's a unified service that handles everything, your basic DNS management and all the fancy advanced traffic routing. Microsoft Azure, though, they split things up. You've got Azure DNS for the domain stuff, and then a totally separate service, Azure Traffic Manager, for the routing. Now, this isn't just semantics. This fundamentally changes how you architect, manage, and even budget for your DNS.
Okay, let's talk core service differences, because this is about more than just a name.
So if you just glance at the features, they seem pretty similar, right? Both promise 100% SLA, which frankly is table stakes. And yeah, both can do GeoDNS to send users to the closest server, but you gotta remember, Azure needs that separate traffic manager for it. But, and this is a big but, look at DNSSEC support. DNSSEC is that extra security layer that proves your DNS records are legit, stopping bad actors from hijacking your traffic. Well, Route 53 has it, Azure DNS doesn't. If you care about security, and you should, that is a massive point in favor of AWS. Like a potential deal breaker right there.
Okay, features on a spec sheet are nice, but the real-world test, the true proving ground for any modern cloud service, that's the hybrid cloud challenge.
So, here's the million-dollar question. How do they handle resolving names between your own data center and the cloud? You know, how do you get your server on-prem to talk to a database in the cloud, and vice versa, without all sorts of headaches?
Okay, let's take a look at the old way of doing this on Azure. And yeah, it was kind of messy. To get your on-prem network talking to the cloud, you literally had to set up and manage your own virtual machines just to act as DNS forwarders. We're talking more patching, more security overhead, and just another thing that could break. It worked, sure, but it was a serious operational headache.
But thankfully, things have changed. This is the modern solution, the Azure Private DNS Resolver. It's a game changer. It's a fully managed service, which means you can say goodbye to those clunky forwarder VMs. As you can see, the architecture is so much cleaner. It just uses these dedicated endpoints for traffic flowing in and out, making the whole thing seamless. The operational burden? Pretty much gone.
So what about AWS?
Well, it's no surprise that Route 53 has a very similar, very modern approach to solve this exact same problem.
The setup process for the AWS Route 53 resolver is pretty logical too. First, you create what they call resolver endpoints. One for inbound traffic, one for outbound, which lets DNS queries flow between your cloud environment and your on-prem network. Sound familiar? Next, you create forwarding rules. This is where you tell Route 53, hey, if you see a query for something like example.local, send it over to my on-prem DNS servers. And the last step is just to close the loop. You tell your on-prem DNS to forward any cloud-related queries back to that inbound endpoint in AWS. And that's it. You've built a solid two-way bridge.
All right, enough about the tech specs and architecture diagrams. What are people actually saying? You know, the folks who use this stuff day in and day out.
Let's hear the verdict from the field. Whoa, okay, this is fascinating. Check this out. According to recent PeerSpot data, when you look at market mindshare, this is an absolute dead heat. Azure DNS is just barely ahead at 11.3%, with Route 53 breathing down its neck at 11%. I mean, you can't get much closer than that. It just goes to show how massively popular and competitive both of these services are.
But here's the thing. Mindshare isn't the whole story. What about user satisfaction? And this is where things get really interesting. Look at this. Azure DNS has a great score. 93% of users are willing to recommend it. That's awesome. But Amazon Route 53, 100%. Every single user would recommend it. You just don't see numbers like that. It's a huge nod to the quality and reliability of the service. And this quote from Pavan Kalyan, an AWS and DevOps engineer, pretty much sums it up. He says, "The pricing of Route 53 is slightly higher. However, it is justified by its high availability and reliability." And that's the story you hear over and over. Yes, it might cost a bit more, but you're paying for that rock-solid premium experience.
But let's not forget the other side of the coin. The argument for Azure DNS is all about that incredible value and deep integration. Here's a quote from Venkat Raju, who points out, "The ROI is always high because Azure DNS setup is essential and does not incur high charges." So if you're already living and breathing in the Azure world, it's cost-effective, it just works, and the return on investment is a slam dunk. Okay, we've seen the architecture, we've compared the features, we've heard from the users. Now it's time to put it all together. Let's figure out how to choose your DNS champion.
All right, here's the bottom line. This is your decision cheat sheet. You should choose Amazon Route 53 if you need those advanced routing features, if DNSSEC security is a must-have, or if you're building a really complex, maybe even multi-cloud setup where you need maximum flexibility. On the flip side, you should choose Azure DNS if you're already deeply invested in the Azure ecosystem. If your main goals are simplicity, seamless integration, and keeping your costs in check for your Azure workloads, it's the clear choice.
So at the end of the day, your application's front door is its DNS. It's the very first thing every user interacts with. The only question left is, which one of these gatekeepers are you going to choose?